Hi, my name is Kyoko Takayama. I'm the Democracy Reform Work Group of Indivisible Tribe Lead. Today, we have Tom Moore of the American Progress to present the Montana Plan and AB 1984, which was introduced in California in February. So, Tom, please take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Delighted to speak to you guys about this. California Indivisible groups have been amazing on this, all over the state. I've talked to a bunch of different chapters, and the statewide group's been terrific. So, could not appreciate your support more on this. So, this is a way to doesn't overturn Citizens United, doesn't violate Citizens United, but it makes it irrelevant. And for the last 16 years, everybody has been believed that the only way we could get corporate and dark money out of our politics would be to get a constitutional amendment in the U.S. Constitution or to get a new Supreme Court, which, and it looks like, neither one of those is going to be happening anytime soon. But it turns out that there's a third way. And there are a couple features that have been sitting in every state's laws for a century or more that basically give states the authority to redefine, to change up the powers of the corporations that operate in the state at any time for any reason. And there is 200 years of consistent, straight Supreme Court precedent on this that says that states have unlimited authority to do this. They don't need to give a reason. It can be a bad reason. Doesn't matter what the reason is. Doesn't matter who it affects. Doesn't matter who it hurts. This is part of the deal of being a corporation in a state is that the state can change up your powers at any time. You're on notice for that. But nobody's done it for the last century. About in the early 1900s, every state started competing with each other to give all the powers to all the corporations all the time. New Jersey finally blew it for everybody. Just went shoop, it just said corporations are the powers of natural people. And every other state matched that more or less. And it's just sat there for the last century. But these provisions in the laws that way predate that say, hey, we can change these up at any time, and it affects all corporations, not just new ones. And this is the cherry on top. This is the reason the whole thing works. No out of state, uh, no out of state corporation can exercise any power in this state that a domestic corporation can't exercise. So what that means is if California were to pass something like this, then every California chartered corporation, not headquartered, but chartered by the state of California, would be out of the world of politics altogether. They couldn't spend in anything in California or anything anywhere in the galaxy. But it also means that 49 states worth of out-of-state corporations could not spend in California's ballot issues or in their local, state, and federal elections. Um, so it's pretty powerful. It's so powerful that it's actually freaked out a fair number of progressive groups as well as conservative groups. It would change the way a lot of groups do their fundraising. A lot of progressive groups, labor, as well as conservative groups and business, really adapted their practices to Citizens United. And they've accepted a lot of dark money, they've accepted a lot of corporate money, and they've been raising it, they've been spending it, and they're comfortable with that. This would pull that security blanket away, and everybody would have to learn a new way to do it. I think at the end of the day that a membership organization that can't write a check out of its treasury anymore, but has to go to the PAC, basically say like, hey, what do you give? We have a PAC. Give your political contributions to our PAC. They're going to be at an advantage because they've got a lot of members that they can go ask to give to the PAC. Where a business corporation actually has a relatively small number of people that they can go to. They can't just go to every employee. It's senior management and a couple other groups like that. So that's the general idea. It was introduced in California as AB 1984, and it was also introduced in 13 other states. And in every state except one, those bills died, um, you know, reasonably quick deaths, which is not unusual for a brand new bill. Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. It exercises this power that nobody's touched in a century. Um, so California, we had a hearing in the banking committee, the Assembly Banking Committee, and they did not have a vote. It seemed word was that Assembly leadership did not want it to have a vote, so it did. So it died in committee right there. Assemblymember Rogers, Chris Rogers, was the author of the bill, and he did a really, really good job with it. I was impressed at how principled he was throughout this and how hard he fought for it. Hopefully, he will author the bill again in the next session. Um, it is still alive in Hawaii. Uh, they are uh, it cleared a conference committee the other day. So it's if it needs to get one more amendment, probably happen on Wednesday. They'll vote on it on Friday, and if they can get that done, it goes to the governor's desk for his signature. It's not 100% clear he's going to want to sign it, but it's one of these things that picked up enough momentum that nobody wants to be in the position to kill it. And the other place that this is active is Montana. That's been going for more than a year. It's not legislation, it's a ballot initiative. And they have cleared the language with the Attorney General. The Montana Supreme Court weighed in on whether the Attorney General should have cleared it. And they said he should have. And they're not gathering signatures right now. They have to get 30,000 signatures by June 19. Um, they're well on their way. I think this is going to work. And uh, if they get the signatures and it's on the ballot in November, it will pass. This has incredibly high support across the country in every demographic group. It's a couple points higher in Montana. They really hate dark money and corporate money, and they hate and the corruption that comes with it. Um, and if it passes in Montana, we're going to go to court like as soon as the polls close. There'll be a lawsuit filed like that. Um, and one of the things I've been working on this year is all the different ways that the Supreme Court will not just flip this. It's not as easy to get rid of this as it is to get rid of some other bills. And I can talk about that. But uh, if the Supreme Court decides that don't want to pay the price of overturning it, which I think that might be the case, that's the day when every indivisible group in the country, we'll be calling every legislator in the country and saying, like, we want you to pass this right now. So um, that is that's the state of play right now. All eyes are on Hawaii and Montana. We'll see what happens in Hawaii. Hawaii's a nice surprise. Didn't expect it to really. It went much further than anybody could have hoped. Might actually make it all the way, but Montana is almost certainly going all the way. Um, and if it does that, this will get dark and corporate money out of our politics, state by state. And this can only be done at the state level because this is all a matter of state corporation law. The Congress can't do it. Congress wouldn't do it, but they can't actually. But states can, and this is incredibly popular. And especially after the Supreme Court clears it, if they do, I think it'll start to move very quickly in a bunch of states, including California. That is the explanation of it, and I would love to take your questions.
Yeah, so the first question would be like, our state senator McNerney joined to be a co-author. And first time when I talked to him, the union stuff was hung up. And somehow you cleared that part. So can you actually tell us how that happened?
Uh, unions, unions are not a big fan of this. Unions actually did a very, very good job of adapting to the post-Citizens United world, and they like being able to write a check out of their checkbooks and spend it however they want. They don't have to beg money for the PAC. They don't have to. They can spend it out of the mandatory dues that everybody has to pay who's a member of the union. They don't have to beg people to contribute separately to the PAC. They don't have to explain it to anybody. I mean, if I were doing this, I would absolutely prefer the system we have now. Problem is that they've been getting their tails kicked. They are raising money, but everybody else is raising a lot more money. And so the relative influence of labor in the Citizens United era has dropped fairly dramatically. Um, I think people are making their budgets and that kind of thing, but it's like they are losing. This would actually give them a chance to kind of reset everything and be on the same level as everybody else. That has been a hard um, thing to get across to labor. And I don't think California labor is convinced of this. But Senator McNerney, you know, was convinced enough that he's willing to go ahead with it, which was terrific.
And you did make an amendment just before the end of the session. Uh, what was about?
Yeah, there was a couple. I had lot of back and forth with a bunch of progressive nonprofit groups who were doing great work. Um, they um, they spend money in ballot issues, and they would like to continue to spend money in ballot issues. And some of it's fine, and some of it's not fine. I proposed a series of amendments that proposed them to the citizen groups. I proposed them to Assemblymember Rogers, and then I'm then I'm done. I don't make any decisions here. But the idea was there are a couple things in California state law that are a little odd. One is if you're a group that does an endorsement, that's considered an in-kind political contribution. Doesn't have to be. You can actually just exclude that from the definition of what counts as political spending. And in most places, it's not considered an in-kind contribution. And under federal law, it's not. Um, Another one is like to pay the administrative costs of a PAC. That is allowed under federal law. It's allowed in most places. In California, it's an in-kind political contribution. If you are no longer, if if the idea of the bill is that no corporations have the power to spend in politics anymore, then they can't be doing in-kind political contributions. You either have to define that, say that the things that they want to do are not defined as political activity anymore, or just they can't do it. The one thing that they would really like to do is have folks who are on the paid staff of nonprofits work to help pass ballot issues when they are being paid by the nonprofit. And that one can't work. That is literally just paying expenses of the nonprofits. Sorry, paying expenses of the
Political
campaign
activity. Yeah.
in a way that just doesn't work. So that's where the amendments I proposed were things like endorsements and the costs, the administrative costs, and that kind of thing. Where we did not find agreement was on the in-kind labor that the nonprofits have been paying for.
So in a way, endorsement part is we just need to change California definitions of the political expenditure.
Yeah, it's it just had to be an amendment to this. It to say like, look, if like you're empowered to do all kinds of stuff, but not political spending power. But endorsements are not considered political spending power. That was a nice, clean way to do that. And I was happy to make a couple amendments like that because I think that those make sense. I
Mhm.
mean, and they're kind of speech issues. It's kind of odd that they were considered spending by California in the first place, and I'm not sure that was actually proper for I'm not sure the current system of doing is proper. This gets us back to a place where, if an organization or a corporation wants to speak out about a ballot issue, they can say, we support this or we oppose this. They can't spend a lot of money taking out ads to get that position across. So that's where the line is.
Uh-huh. That's okay. So the Shivani is asking, why did fail in the banking committee? What was the feedback from committee? And that's what we are talking about right now.
Yeah, it's the leadership. I think it was assembly leadership said like, don't do a vote. I went and spoke to almost every member of the staff of almost every member of the committee before the hearing.
Mhm.
Even the Republicans were actually fairly positive about it. I was surprised. I was pleased and surprised. They really got it. This is not something that helps Democrats. This is not something that hurts Republicans. It's not something that hurts Democrats or helps Republicans. This is something that just it's not a zero-sum game. It helps everybody. It helps the democracy. And the Republicans were able to see that. I think a lot of Democrats were as well, but leadership basically said, we're not having a vote on it, have it die right here. So that's what happened.
Is it not have a vote because if they had a vote that it would pass?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes,
It's
that's
it's
kind.
it's one of those things people don't want to be on record voting against it.
Yeah, that's probably.
So, um, so why do we think that next time we'll have a different outcome? Like, what is our strategy for next? Like, that's my second question.
Yeah. So the very best way to pass a bill next year is to have it fail this year.
Mm.
It almost doesn't matter what the topic is. The first time it shows up, everyone's like, "What is that? Who's this? Who supports it? Why has anybody else done it?" All these questions, and then it dies. It doesn't get a hearing or gets out of one committee, and that's it. So forth. That is not unusual at all. In my home state of Maryland, it usually takes 3 or 4 sessions for a bill to make it all the way through. And it's kind of like it gets a little further each time, picks up a little more support, and then goes. But it's unusual for it to happen the first year. So, I mean, the best thing to do next time is to just try it again. Maybe with the amendments in from the start, maybe having the progressive nonprofit community, hopefully have them a little bit more on board. Um, I mean, if the Supreme Court clears this, it is coming. People are going to want this. People want this kind of reform like 75 to 25. It's an extremely popular reform. So, once the Supreme Court says, yes, you can do this, it is constitutional to do this, I think there'll be an awful lot of pressure. And in states where there have been bills and everyone's seen them and everyone's kind of like worked out the kinks a little bit, those are states that'll be able to pass them much faster. So that's my hope for California.
Got it. And the timeline for when we would have the Supreme Court would be like end of next year, something like that?
That would be fast. It really depends. There are a
Mm.
couple things about this where um, I I think we could actually we could actually one outcome is that we could actually win very, very quickly on a motion to dismiss before the trial even starts. There are a couple things about this where it's not even clear the court has jurisdiction to hear it because the remedy that they would want to impose can't be done, which denies them jurisdiction. So there may be it could be super fast. It could be by the end of next year, but my guess is it won't be quite that fast. It'll be maybe a year or two more after that. It has to go through the district courts, then the circuit courts, and then to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and at the same time, California legislators do not want to be the last people to adopt progressive agenda. So if
Right.
Montana passes it, probably we are gonna have much more support next year. And
Yeah.
so the biggest challenge for us, what I was thinking about this, the common cause and clean money campaigns opposition would be the biggest obstacles because once that's cleared, almost every single individual group will be on board. Until that happens, it's a little bit of touch and go in our
Yeah.
end.
And there's a good faith concern that those groups have.
Mhm.
I used to be chair of the Common Cause Maryland board, and Common Cause Maryland is all for this, which I'm pleased about. But there is one thing that this doesn't touch is any person's behavior, any person's spending. So if a billionaire wants to drop a bunch of money into a super PAC and have that super PAC spend, a ton of money independently in politics, they can still do that. This can't stop them from doing that. There's another reform that's being worked out in the First Circuit that hopefully will take care of that. But what it will stop billionaires from doing is doing it anonymously, which is mostly what they've been doing for the last 16 years, is running it through a dark money group, and the dark money group gives the super PAC. Super PAC discloses all their donors, but it's only the name of this shadowy
Yep.
C4 group. So their concern, Common Cause's concern, and Clean Money Campaigns California's concern was that, look, if that billionaire route is still open and we don't have any dark money that we can raise and spend, we'll just get outspent. Um,
I thought we outspent.
Yeah, we're already getting outspent. I mean, that's the
Yes.
billionaires can already spend what they want. They're already getting outspent. But it's like one way to think about this is that like the dark and corporate money in our politics, all the independent spending that way, um, even when it's being spent by progressives, is the most corrosive and damaging political communications in our system because they're totally unaccountable. They don't have to coordinate with a campaign to know that the candidate's campaign is going to be like, "Hey, I'm great. Vote for me. I'm the best guy there ever was." And the C4s and the super PACs who are doing all the independent spending, they know that their job is to say, you know, that guy's terrible. He's awful, 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 just go completely negative on the opponent. And they can because they can say whatever they want because there's no accountability there. It doesn't go back to the candidate who's just saying happy, positive things. And that's really corrosive, even when it's progressive spending that kind of money. So it is, you know, we can't get rid of their dark money, but not our dark money. But all of the dark money is hurting our system.
Yeah, especially for the voters' view. Yes.
Yeah.
And the Jen is, just a minute. So Charles, it's a question of the Supreme Court clearing this mostly about them spending political capital, Citizens United and corporate personhood don't seem to me to be particularly textual. So it's not clear to me that striking this down would be any more ridiculous than where they already are. Yeah. So our
Yeah.
Supreme Court has been crazy. So
Yeah, and one way to think about what happened, this is interesting that, in the early 1900s, all the states said, all right, fine, all the corporations have the power of humans to do this. They meant business stuff. If you went back 100 years and asked one of those legislators, hey, so do you think that that language means the ability to spend an unlimited amount of money independently in politics, they would have thought you were nuts to even ask the question because nobody ever wanted that. Nobody ever said that. Like clearly not what states had in mind. When the court got to Citizens United, they said, "Oh, look at this! Like they've got the power of a human, and humans have the power to spend in politics, and so corporations must have the power to spend in politics." That's all assumed. Let's start from right there and talk about their right to spend in politics. And when California or Hawaii or Montana or any state makes this reform, it's not even the state changing its mind. This is the state saying, like, this is what we always thought. Like, we never meant to give political spending power to the corporations. You did that, court. And so now we're going to be a little more specific in our definition so you can't misread it again. But we've been consistent all the way through. We never wanted this. You jammed it down our throats. And because we're in charge of what corporations look like, we're going to change that back. So that's basically what this move is.
And Jen asked, can you explain a little more about how this would work nationally if SCOTUS chooses not to rule on it, like they did with partisan gerrymandering? And if some
Yeah.
states don't have ballot initiatives or their legislatures won't pass it, how would it work if only in a few states pass it?
Yeah. So if, say it passes in Montana and we go to court and the district court says, like, yeah, that looks all right. And the circuit court says, yeah, that looks all right. If the Supreme Court doesn't take that case, if they don't grant cert on that, that is the green light for it. That's the day. That is the day that basically the Supreme Court is saying, this is okay for states to do. We're not going to overturn this. And so that's the day when every state, it's kind of open season for every state to go at it. Um, and if Montana ends up being the only state to ever pass this, um, Montanans are better off. Their ballot issues in their local, state, and federal elections are clear of all dark and corporate money. And they've this is what's different about this reform than others. If you're trying to get a federal constitutional amendment passed, you can fight a holy war in your state about it, and then you pass it. Maybe you win, you pass it, and nothing happens. Nothing happens until Congress actually proposes the amendment and three-quarters of the states also pass the amendment. Like you've shed blood, sweat, and tears to get this thing over the finish line, and nothing happens at all. In Montana or Hawaii, if this passes January 1st, 2027, it's done. I mean, it is set for that state. Montana couldn't care less if Wyoming never does it. You know, Hawaii couldn't care less if California doesn't ever do it, except they would laugh at you for being allowing them to be first. Um, and they have better elections than you do now. Um, but basically, it doesn't. It's not one of these things where you need 25 states to actually make it work. It is something where every state that does it cleans up their own act immediately.
Yeah, so in a way, because we are the republic, each state can actually do whatever they can. Um, Everything about voting is state stuff. Redistricting is state stuff.
Right.
So we can actually win state by state. And at the same time, like Montana, I don't know where it's gonna go. Like now, Montana is still the Republican
Yeah.
state, but it may change after that. So those
Well,
are the things, we don't know where it's gonna
and
go.
yeah, and I'm not doing this reform to make Montana into a Democratic state.
No.
I'm doing this to relieve Montana and, Americans living in Montana the burden of the horrible amount of dark and corporate money that's been just flooding their elections for the last couple cycles. I mean, it was a gigantic amount of money that was in their Senate race last time. More of it was actually spent on behalf of
Yes.
Democratic Senator John Tester than on his Republican opponent. And Tester still lost, but it was like it was saturated for months in Montana. They were sick of it. And it was ugly, and it was really unpleasant, and it's the kind of thing that damages people's faith in their democracy. So, I don't. If at the end of the day, 50 states pass this, and we have exactly the same partisan margins we have right now, um, I think we'll still be a better country. Because one thing is, no matter who you are, if you're a Democratic legislator or a Republican legislator, like right now, you can't cut a deal with the other side because you're going to worry about somebody from the extreme funded by dark money or the threat of that, coming to primary you and kick you out of office. So, this would eliminate that threat.
And can this be a proposition in California instead of legislation? Yes.
Yes, it absolutely can. And there's two ways to do it. You can write it into your constitution if you want, or you write it, do it as a statutory initiative. Um, yeah, in Montana, we're doing it. We did it as a ballot initiative because we thought the legislature would never, ever, ever pass it. That may also be the case in California. We'll see. Um, Labor is not a fan. Some of the other groups are not a fans. So um, the uh, the ballot initiative route is definitely open in California.
Yeah, but we need to have somebody to carry the banner, so
Yeah,
so to speak.
yeah, and it's been the usual suspects don't always show up for this because it does gore
Yeah.
everybody's ox. It doesn't.
Hmm.
This doesn't hurt. You're not going to get a bunch of progressive groups lining up to help on this because it doesn't just eviscerate conservative fundraising and help Democrats. So it's your usual
And
suspects are not always going to be around for this one.
and in a way, Indivisible is the perfect carrier
Yeah.
because we are not incorporated as chapter levels. Majority of us are just chapters of the nationals and act as 501(c)(4), but we're not incorporated. So we don't have spending power to period.
Yeah, and if you
So
wanted, and basically, like a lot of what you guys do is lobbying,
yes.
and that's fine. That doesn't change that. None of that is affected by this bill.
Yeah, so this year we had a primary endorsement stuff. So endorsement stuff needs to be changed, and that was clear.
Well, you could do the endorsement, but to
Yeah.
publicize the endorsement, someone else would have to pay for that.
Yeah, but like Facebook, unless you pay for the advertisement, that's the free stuff.
Yes, no, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And as long as we are all volunteers, oh, but
Yes.
where is that in-kind donation for the political power ends? That's a kind of sticky point. It's not clearly written anywhere. So
Well, it's more clear than you think. Actually, um, the California Fair Political Practices Commission, the Federal Election Commission, they've been answering those questions for years. They're actually very good at separating what
Mm.
counts as in-kind spending and what doesn't. So it's if you're just walking into it, you're like, oh my God, this seems really complicated. A lot of thought has been put into what goes where.
Okay, so that sounds good.
Yeah.
And could it pass in Hawaii as soon as this month? And if so, how soon could the lawsuits come?
I think it could pass in Hawaii as soon as next month. So the timeline right now is I'm going to get this wrong, I think. Um, they have to do floor amendments by Wednesday and then vote on that by Friday. That's sine die. That's the last day of their legislative session. And then the governor has, I think, 10 days. It's either there's some period in there where the governor makes a list of bills that he might veto. And there's I think it's 10 days after that. The 10 days or 45 days. Um, these
Yeah,
10.
10 days is very short because in California it's like 30 days. Yeah.
Okay, so say it's 45 days. 45 days for the governor to create that list. And if it doesn't go on the list, then it's good. It becomes law. If it does go on the list, then you can fight to not have it vetoed, but there'll be a little bit of an uphill fight then. But it's interesting. One of the interesting things we have seen, and I think this will be useful in California as well, is people don't want to be seen voting against this. This is extremely popular among both parties,
Mhm.
independents, Republicans, Democrats, everybody. And people might try to kill it in the background the way AB 1984 was killed in the background
Mhm.
this year, but nobody wants to vote against it. So that's a strength. That is something that you could use to your advantage.
So the major thing for us in California is just create more co-authors. So the majority of the legislators are on the bill already. That would be
Yeah,
the,
get people to go on the record saying, are you for it or
yeah.
against it? Um, get committee chairs to there will be a new assembly banking chair in the next session. Um,
And
you
of
know,
course, after the election, the assembly will change.
right.
So yeah.
The other thing that I learned this as we were going through the process, it's you guys have a 2-year session, and
Yes.
this was
The
this year is the
second,
last year
yes.
of the 2-year session. So it either had to make it through committee fast or it was dead. If this is reintroduced next year, you've got more runway to actually get
It's
it passed.
literally year and 1 month.
Yeah,
That's that's how
yeah,
much
it
time
was
we
super
have.
fast.
Yes.
So, um, but but I'm going to be pushing this for the long term, over the long term. I think, I California was my first big trip to go press the flesh and talk to folks about this. Be delighted to come out and do it again. Um, Delighted to talk to any individual group or anybody out there who wants to learn more about it. It would be a big deal if California passed it, and it would help a lot of people.
Yes, it would. So still the question is how soon the lawsuit is coming in
Oh,
after
right.
pass.
So sorry. So that was the question. I believe the lawsuit is going to come the day after it's signed. I mean, it will be
Yeah, I
fast.
believe that too.
So, and it'll probably be a federal suit. Um,
Mm.
and and that's fine. But there are I've been collecting all the different ways that a court isn't either can't overturn it or doesn't want to. It in Citizens United, that ruling overturned a big part, a major part of um, the McCain-Feingold law, BICRA. Um, but it's a regulation, and they just kind of like scratch out that regulation. You can't enforce that, you're done. This is an entirely different um, authority that the state is exercising. It's not just kind of like it's not bans or restricting or it's not like pulling down on your rights. It's not saying that you can do less because we're passing all these rules to restrict your rights. That's all this regulation over here. That's what Citizens United talked about. It's on this side, which is saying like, oh, we create you, we give you your powers, we decide what that list is, hey, here's your new list. It's shorter. And that makes all the difference. And but what's interesting about it is if you're a court that says like, okay, the state gave like these three powers to their corporations, but I really think that this political spending power, you really ought to give that one as well. A court can't do that. A court can't write that into your law. Only the legislature or the people acting as the legislature with an initiative can do that. So because we're on this side, on this power granting authority side, the tools that are available to courts are very, very different from anything we've seen before, and they just don't. Their toolbox is almost empty.
And that's exactly why the Montana State Court approved of that. Yeah.
That was a little complicated, but yes, they basically said it's powers, not rights, and so you're good. Um, um, okay, so I actually got good questions from Jen and Sip. Okay, Jen, could a corporation domiciled in a state that has passed the bill send money somehow into a state that hasn't? Is there language in the bill to restrict that? So what's interesting, so um, if a corporation were to do that, if this passes in Hawaii, and then a Hawaii chartered corporation, not domiciled, that's different. A Hawaii chartered corporation spent money in California in some California election, they could lose their charter. They could get the corporate death penalty. That's the kind of penalties that come from exceeding your powers as a corporation. It's they did this all through the 19th century. It's called ultra vires, beyond the powers. Um, it is very, very bad. You can hold your officers and directors personally liable. You can strip away the corporation's legal liability protections, um, uh, limited liability protections, and it is basically their lawyers, that company's insurers, more to the point, will say, you can't, no, like you can't, do not do that. Like we will cancel your insurance if you do that because it could be so destructive to this company. So the law, to answer directly, Jen, the law, yes, does take care of that. But what really takes care of it are all these kind of private consequences outside of it, where violating is not just a slap on the wrist, it can be the end of the corporation. And nobody wants to risk that. Um,
And she wants to know if you have newsletter. I know you have
um,
a website.
yes, there's a website. I'm trying to get a listserv together. My organization, I put one together. I was all real happy about it. I got it all going, and then they said, um, I- they basically different departments started like taking uh, uh, turf. Like they're like, no, 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 you, you can't do that. We have to do it, and these rules and so forth. So we're going to do it. We're going to try that again. But yes, there will be a listserv soon that will have this kind of news. Here's what's happening in California, Hawaii, Montana, and so forth. Yeah. So I would that will be soon, and I will try to get news out to you guys so you can join and keep up. And I will try to make it an interesting read.
Good. And can you just drop the website for us?
Um, so the best website is the Montana website. They have everything going there. I'll drop it into the chat. It's transparentelection.org. That's the name of the group that's um, let's see that. That's right. Yeah. That's the name of the group, the Transparent Election Initiative, that is um,
Yeah,
moving it. And then there's the Montana plan itself. Type, it would be so helpful. Um, and yeah, so and they just have a ton of information about this. I work very closely with the folks in Montana. They are terrific. Um, Something that people in California could do right now is toss them a couple bucks. It costs a lot of money to get this kind of thing together. One of the things they're doing, which I don't know if you could ever do it in California, they're collecting all the signatures on a volunteer basis. They have something like 700 volunteers signed up to go out and get these signatures that they need, which is extraordinary. Um, but it's not free. There are legal expenses. There are other organizing expenses. Um, but those two websites are absolutely the best information out there.
Thank you, Tom.
Welcome.
Is there any other question? You can come off, unmute, and ask.
Yeah. Just is everybody clear on the concept? Is everybody clear on why this is different from every other reform that we've seen before? That's the thing I want to get most across. This is not just another bill. This is something that nobody's tried in 100 years, and that's why it's going to work.
Yeah, I would, if nobody else has any questions, I'd just like to pick a little bit more at the Supreme Court
Yeah.
question. So I get the idea that that the state is giving these powers and that taking away powers is not the same as punishing speech.
Right.
But I guess I don't really get why the Supreme Court, given that, these things are not very textual, why it won't just find something in the vein of like the speech itself is protected.
Yeah. So that's not the hard part. They could just say that, right? I mean,
Right.
they can absolutely flip. The hard part is what's the remedy? And the hard part is all the things that flow from the remedy. And I'll give you an example. 25 states, including California, I believe, have something in the language in their constitutions that says, hey, we create corporations with general law, and any of the statutes that the legislature passes can be amended or revoked at any time. It's language to that effect. And so what that means is, like in Hawaii is even more specific about this. It basically says you can never issue a privilege that can't be taken back. And they're basically the same thing, saying the same thing. So California is just like, look, you know, uh, you know, any law that we pass, we can modify, or that we can revoke altogether. If the Supreme Court says like, yep, we get rid of it, it's gone, just says that, and then there's no way to say that without saying we have constitutionalized this corporate power. We have federalized it. We have said, look, the U.S. Constitution says there's something about your state's definition of corporations that you can't change anymore. The only kind of corporation you can create are corporations where you can't take back the spending power. That's a real problem.
Well, I
Because,
guess Citizens
well,
United already kind of had done that because of the
well,
interpretation that the 14th Amendment is endowing this personhood clause.
and that's actually that oddly not wrapped up in Citizens United. Actually, they didn't talk about corporate person at all, but if they say that all this is federalized, the problem is that over on California's side, they're saying like, wait a minute, our Constitution says the only kind of corporations we can create are the ones where we can take back any power at any time. And you're telling us, Supreme Court, that we can't take back this power, that the only kind of corporation we can create is one where you can't take back some power. So basically, on California's side, this is saying like, oh, you're telling us that the only kind of corporations we're allowed to create under the federal constitutions are ones that we're not empowered to create under our Constitution. So California would be arguably out of the corporation chartering business. 25 states would arguably be out of the corporation chartering business. And because these kind of decisions are retroactive, it could throw into question the validity of any charter they've ever issued, because they thought they were issuing charters where they could take back all the powers, and it turns out that's invalid. So and the key thing about that is that if this is going to happen in these 25 states, it's not up to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's up to 25 separate state Supreme Courts to say what their Constitution means. And that is the kind of chaos that the Supreme Court does not want to risk. They are risking huge, huge foundational chaos in our system if they flip this. And it's so different from just flipping from what they did in Citizens United, which was just take a piece off of PICRA. So that's the idea.
Thanks. I like that answer.
Okay.
I'm going
Yeah,
to
me too.
play.
It took me a while to get to it, but yeah.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Sure.
They, yes, they'd rather avoid this chaos, but would they rather avoid it rather than avoiding other things? Like, I mean, we all suspect we've got a pretty corrupt Supreme Court. How sure are we? I guess what I'm asking is how sure are we they wouldn't be ready to go that far, given all the things that we've seen in recent years, especially this year, that most people would have said 5 years ago is, that will never happen. So,
Good. Excellent question. Good point.
being the devil.
No. You're not the devil. So, the this is a terrible Supreme Court. I think they are without any kind of good legal principles. They will, just toss stuff aside at random whenever they feel like it. But one thing they don't ever do is rule against their interests. And there is an interest in making sure that corporations can spend in politics. That's definitely an interest of theirs. But I think there's even bigger interests in preserving federalism when it comes to corporation law. There is the political questions that doctrine that they've been making a lot of noise about. They have been systematically moving power away from the federal government into the states for the last 20 years. That's been one of their major projects. To break this, they would have to disavow most of that. And it's not that they couldn't do it. I just think it's something they don't want to do because it is a balance. And like, they don't want to do this, but they really don't want to do this. The way I've been thinking about it is like, upholding, the AB 1984 is like a spider. And I'm never, ever going to convince them that they're going to enjoy eating the spider. But I can convince them that they would rather eat the spider than drink the glass of battery acid that would which is what would happen if they overturned it, and all these systemic consequences flowed from that. Like, they're never going to like this, but they may prefer it over the alternative. That's the hope.
Yeah, let's hope. I like that, but that image. I was thinking like, okay, plague and cholera.
No,
Forcing
that's
them to
the
choose between plague and cholera.
yes, there you go. Exactly. Yeah.
So basically, because each state actually establishes the corporations, and the corporations are creatures of the state law, they are not likely to touch that one.
Yeah. And actually, what's interesting is like, corporations are creatures of state law, but there's one exception. There's one big exception. Our national banks, which were created by the National Banking Acts of the 1860s. And they don't have a general power grant. They have an enumerated power grant that says, here's like 10 different things that you can do very tightly tied to banking. Then they've got a little bit of a clause at the end that says, or anything that's incidental to banking. But it's like, it's not a do everything you want. You can do whatever a person can do and so forth. And that has never in, 100 and however many years, been construed, 160 years, been construed to give them the power to spend in elections, ever. And nobody's ever thought that it did. Nobody's ever challenged it. It's just a given that they don't have the power to spend in elections. So if the basic question that the Supreme Court has before it is, can an American government create corporations that don't have the power to spend in elections? We know that the answer is yes, because we've been doing it since the 1860s. So it's a, and also literally every corporation that was chartered in the 19th century had an enumerated list of powers, and that list never, ever, ever included the power to spend in politics, ever. And, in order to say that this is unconstitutional, they have to say that every corporation that existed in the 19th century, including corporations that were chartered then, and that's their charter, and they still exist today, like the national banks, that those charters are unconstitutional. That would be massively disrupting. And they likely don't want to do it. That's drinking the glass of battery acid.
So the best course for us to take is just make sure our legislature who are representing us would be okay with this thing.
Yeah. And your senator is good. I mean,
Yeah.
they reached out to me early on that, and I really enjoyed dealing with Senator and his staff. But yeah, it's, reach out and um, talk to, if you guys are members of, Common Cause California, speak out on this. It's like, yeah,
Yes,
the
we
job
are.
of Common Cause is not to protect the treasuries of progressive groups. The job of Common Cause is to make our democracy better. And, the the job of Clean Money Campaigns California is to make our democracy better. So, they leaders of those groups are responsive to the members of those groups, and make your voices heard there as well, because that could be very big next time.
That we can do. We are closely working with Clean Money Campaign. So
Good. I appreciate the position that they've taken. I understand the position they've taken. I just think the position is wrong. So,
Have you?
Je-
So,
yeah, Jen asks, have
I
you
have not.
and
Quit.
Jen, your state senator is McNerney. Tim Grayson is in Contra Costa.
So I have a Livermore address, but I'm in
Oh,
this
you are
weird
unincorporated area. That's
part.
correct.
Yeah, but
Okay. Yeah.
I'm right across the border in Contra Costa, so I have Tim Grayson and Assembly Member Farias.
Okay.
That's very different.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have not. But if I mean, actually, one indivisible group got a meeting with their senator and had a Zoom call and dragged me in for that. So I was able to talk to the staff on that. I will talk to anybody. So if I've not spoken to Senator Grayson or his staff on this, but I'd be happy to.
Okay, I will ask them if they are familiar with it.
And
All right, Charles Ward asks about First National Bank of Boston versus Bellotti, a 1979 case, Supreme Court case. So the thing about, and there's a much longer answer on this, but so Bellotti was kind of the Citizens United of ballot issues. There was a criminal statute in Massachusetts that said, look, if you're a corporation and you spend on a ballot issue that's outside your close corporate interests, that's illegal. We're regulating you that way. And the court said that no, that regulation is improper. It doesn't matter who the speaker is. You can't regulate speech that way. What they assumed, just like in Citizens United, was a fully empowered set of speakers. There are actually five plaintiffs in that case. Two of them were national banks. Three of them were state chartered corporations. And the state chartered corporations like, whoo, okay, great. We got this decision. We can go spend on any kind of ballot issue we want. This is something literally nobody's ever explored, but I think actually, like there was the Massachusetts law put a cap, like regulated down what the national banks could do in ballot issues, and then the Supreme Court took the cap away. But I think the national banks were only empowered up to that point, and so when the cap went away, they didn't actually get anything out of it, which is because regulating something down is not the same as empowering it up. The Supreme Court has never, not in Bellotti, not in Citizens United, ever said that the state must empower corporations to spend in politics. It said once they have the power, you can't regulate it improperly, but they've never said that you have to give the power. And that's true of Citizens United, Bellotti, and all the cases in that line. And that's an excellent question, Charles. And that is that one comes up a lot because the rule from Bellotti was the kind of the shorthand for that case was the identity of the speaker doesn't matter. It's like, well, the identity of the speaker does matter. You're assuming a speaker that has the power to speak. And that is an important assumption that's behind all these cases. And, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I hope that satisfies your question.
No, that did. Thank you.
yeah, and it's on the hour. Thank you so much, Tom,
No,
for
it's my
coming.
pleasure. This is great.
And we will keep in touch.
Yeah, please do. Thank you so much for having me. This is doing these sessions are like the best. No, thank you. Best part of my day and week. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys in the middle of the next legislative session. We'll see if we can get it further next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Okay, thank
Tom.
you.
Keep fighting the
Thank
good
you.
fight.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys too. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.